So, Steph, let's shift gears to a team that I don't think we could really consider a historically high-powered offense in the Washington football team. A team built on defense, a team last year rotating between Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, Alex Smith at the quarterback spot, Dwayne Haskins. It was rough. It was rough to watch. But Steph, this year, Washington all of a sudden is picking up some hype with Ryan Fitzmagic in town, with Curtis Samuel brought in free agency as well, and with a rising and emerging Antonio Gibson and Terry McLaurin. All of a sudden, Washington is looking like a fun offense. Steph, I want to know what you think about these guys. How high are you on this Washington football team, and do you think they're being overhyped as we head into 2021?
No, I think they're all incredible values at their ADPs. We'll talk about some of those as we go through some of the takes here, but this offense got a full overhaul. Washington said, look, we're in a soft division, and we're going to be competing against the Cowboys twice a year, the Eagles twice a year, and the Giants twice a year. Let's go out and build an offense that can compete, and let's make the playoffs again, because they went 7-9 last year off the back of their defense and still gave the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a run for their money in the first round of the playoffs. Ryan Fitzpatrick opens up this offense in ways that not many quarterbacks can. I love the selection here to go out and sign Fitz over a Carson Wentz, over some of the other free agency quarterbacks that did hit the market, because he's cheap. And if this team does go into tank mode, then they're going to have an early draft pick next season. But for this year, I love Antonio Gibson. I finally got some dynasty shares. Shout out to the DMS Pioneers League we got going on right now. Again, if you guys want to join a league with us, hit up our Discord channel. Link to that down below. Antonio Gibson was 17th in fantasy points per game at the running back position as a rookie. And on this terrible offense with this QB turmoil, he was still running efficiently at 4.7 yards per attempt. And Gibson showed us the one thing we needed to see from him, which is that he can be a true between the tackles runner, a red zone threat in the NFL at the pro level, and that's exactly what he was in 2020. That was the only question mark coming into the league for him, because he has essentially a wide receiver background from his college days. And in his second season at Memphis, before declaring early to enter the league, he had those 33 rushing attempts, and I know this gets brought up all the time, 33 rushing attempts for a silly 11 yards per carry. And then he saw 38 receptions for 735 yards. That's 19 yards per reception. That's Jalen Waddle levels of efficiency when we're talking about yards per reception. So we knew coming into the league that Gibson is a guy who can be exceptional in the passing game, can be super efficient in the passing game. J.D. McKissick took some of that volume away from him, but Ron Rivera's already come out and said that Antonio Gibson is going to make a, quote, big jump this year. So I'm all in on Gibson at ADP, even above ADP, a guy that I think you can plug in as your RB1 this year and feel really good about it. You mentioned Terry McLaurin. We already know he's a stud. He's still ascending at 25 years old. He's a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 this season. His ADP is fine where it's at right now, but he's going to get a quarterback that's so accurate downfield that he turned Devontae Parker into a wide receiver 1 just 2 years ago. And when I was looking at Terry McLaurin's 2020, what absolutely blew my mind, I was like, how is he putting up this many points on an offense led by Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins, all those other guys? Terry McLaurin was 6th in the league with almost 500 yards after the catch last year. So not only is the target depth going to increase, this is also a guy who can make plays with the ball in his hands, absolutely nasty as a playmaker. But Alex, I want to talk about Curtis Samuel, because I posted this on Twitter. I posted it in the Discord. This is a guy we got to push our chips in on, because even though it took him 4 years, he finally had his breakout season, and it was great timing because he was in a contract year, still super young, came into the league at 20. He's still only 24 years old. You talked about his production on the Panthers a second ago. Over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, 200 of those were rushing yards. We know he's an explosive playmaker. He's been doing that since he was Percy Harvin 2.0 at Ohio State. So a guy who had, again, over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in the number 3 role behind Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore last year on an offense that also wasn't too hot. Now he's stepping into a clear number 2 role tethered to Ryan Fitzpatrick. So why would we not think that he's going to absolutely smash this year with a head coach that drafted him and an offensive coordinator that knows how to use him from Carolina just a year ago? So I love his ADP right now as a wide receiver 3 or flex name. He's a guy I'm all in on this year. I'm buying him in all formats. But Alex, I got to stop talking about Washington because I'm getting a little bit too excited right now. Tell me about Logan Thomas.
Man, for a second, I thought I was just going to sit here the whole time and let you talk, but I don't want to talk about Logan Thomas. He's fine. He's a top 12 tight end. I'm not, going crazy over a 30-year-old breakout tight end who used to be a quarterback, but I think he's going to be fine. Like, if you want to wait and take a tight end in those middle rounds, I think Logan Thomas, who was the tight end 4 last season, actually could return some pretty good value. But I love everything you said. And with Antonio Gibson specifically, like, I don't know why, but for some reason, maybe it's because I don't have shares of him anywhere and I didn't have him last season. I just am trying to find reasons not to like him for this year, and I can't do it. Everything I look at with Antonio Gibson just points towards him having an absolute monster breakout season. And you said it best when you said he proved he can run in between the tackles. And when you think about his rookie year, he was so efficient, so good as a runner. His touchdown upside was good on a terrible offense as well, which made no sense. And now he finally gets the offense to support the touchdown upside, to support longer drives, to support playing with leads with that good defense. So I think it's only wheels up for Gibson. It's just so interesting that in his rookie year, we saw him be so good in between the tackles, and we didn't see him used as much as we would have liked to in the receiving game, which coming out of college, he was supposed to be that pass-catching receiving back, and the question mark was, could he do it in between the tackles? So we kind of flipped the script in his rookie season and gave us the opposite of what we expected to see, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it just proves to me that he can do both. And now with the coaching staff that trusts him, now with J.D. McKissick being a year older and Alex Smith gone and them really wanting to focus on this ground and pound run game with Fitzmagic chucking it down the field over the top out of the play action and a good defense, I think the offense is just set up for extreme success for Antonio Gibson out of the backfield. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of competition for touches. Yes, I think J.D. McKissick does get his here and there, but I think Gibson could step up in the receiving game, which is going to be the thing that takes him over the top into that top 10, top upper echelon running back category. And what you said about Mclaurin and Samuel is great. I can't fathom how Terry McLaurin was a top 20 wide receiver last year with the quarterbacks that they had in Washington. So absolute wheels up for him. He's been nothing short of phenomenal in his first 2 seasons in the league against all odds in terrible situations. Now you finally get a team that's coming off of a playoff appearance with a new coaching staff in Ron Rivera coming in last season, finally establishing that culture, building it into year 2 now that knows how to win. And you get him a quarterback that's going to chuck it, and it's absolute wheels up for Terry. So it's weird to say that this Washington football team could be dynamic, but I think there's a lot to like. I do like Curtis Samuel too. I think you hit it on the head with him. No need to repeat it, Steph. But man, Washington football team could be a playoff team and the team to beat in the NFC East this year.
When I was looking at this outlook from a volume standpoint, I was like, Fitzmagic typically is on teams that throw the ball a lot. I think a lot of that has to do with offenses building around his skill set. But then I was thinking, okay, Washington has this stout defense, especially that stacked front 7 that's just insane with Chase Young, a bunch of other playmakers there. But when I looked at their schedule, right, the NFC East we already talked about, Cowboys were already gushing over. I'm going to talk about the Giants later. The Eagles added a ton of offensive weaponry in the draft. They should be exciting. Washington also crosses over with the AFC North, so they're going to play the Browns, Ravens, and the Bengals this year. They have a game against the Panthers, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals as well. So a lot of strong matchups here as we get throughout the year. I think they will be forced into shootouts. As good as their defense is, they're going to be put into some positions like against the Browns where they're going to have to compete, and they're going to have to put points up on the board. So I'm all in, man, on this Washington team. I can't get over Curtis Samuel. Like, Curtis Samuel right now to me is a league winner in the middle rounds in redraft in 2021. All right, let's stay in the NFC East. I've already prefaced it. The New York Giants. I think it's going to be a gamble on two things if you're investing in this offense. The first gamble is that all their skill position players all come back and are just healthy. Sterling Shepard's missed a ton of time throughout his career. Evan Ingram hasn't exactly been the epitome of good health, even though it seemed like last year he kind of turned the corner on that. The second gamble is if Daniel Jones can ascend. Can Danny Dimes be that franchise QB for the Giants? Because if you look at this weapons group for Daniel Jones, I mean, he has no excuses not to produce this year. In a soft division, he has Saquon Barkley, this generational playmaker, generational running back who can get it done through the air, should help Daniel Jones as far as his efficiency goes. We get Kenny Golladay, who is a deep threat, contested catch wide receiver, the exact prototype of wide receiver that Daniel Jones needs since he likes to throw it into traffic so much. So we may see Daniel Jones pull a Josh Allen. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just saying it's potentially possible that Danny Dimes pulls a Josh Allen and Kenny Golladay is Stephon Diggs of last year. I think the upside is there. Probably not going to happen. But then beyond that, you have Sterling Shepard. He's a consistent veteran, possession receiver that can dominate in the slot, especially if this offense is humming. He has been the target leader throughout the last couple seasons when he's on the field. So for all intents and purposes, he was the one before Golladay came in, probably going to play the number 2. We have Darius Slayton as an explosive field stretcher who has had games where he's carried the entire offense. And then Kadarius Toney's brought in the first round as an explosive weapon that can be used all over the field and on special teams. So I think at ADP, all these guys can be values. Now, I'm probably not going to go out and draft Sterling Shepard or draft Darius Slayton, but there's certainly waiver names, guys to keep an eye on. They're going to end up on rosters, and I love the super late dart throw on Toney.
Yeah, I'm with you for the most part. I mean, you look at this offense, and it should have the opportunity to be good in 2021, and it really feels like this is it for Daniel Jones. I mean, I know he still technically has a year after this year on his rookie deal, so technically he should be on the roster. But after bringing in Kenny G, after drafting Toney, after getting Saquon back, you really start to feel like this is make or break for Daniel Jones. And if he falls flat on his face this season, I wouldn't be surprised to see them draft a quarterback or to bring somebody else in. I really wouldn't. So they're setting him up for success, saying if you can't do it with this group of weapons, you can't do it. And I think he can. I think he can. I'm not going to put all my chips on him showing out this season, but I think there's a good shot he could be successful. So Daniel Jones himself is definitely a guy I'm keeping my eye on the waiver wire early. I'm probably not going to draft him because I don't think he'll be drafted in many leagues. But if he comes out week 1, week 2, and he's looking pretty good, I'm happy to scoop him up right away because that could be a trend of things to come for Daniel Jones. Loved him going into last season. The wheels fell off early last season, though, for New York. So I don't know how much of it was just absolute dysfunction within that organization. You think about Saquon going down early in the season. Daniel Jones was dealing with injuries of his own with his hamstrings. And then you've got Golden Tate causing all sorts of problems. Sterling Shepard, you said it, battling injuries. Evan Ingram, out of nowhere, just totally sucked. Finally stayed healthy. Finally got the targets we want to see Evan Ingram get. 109 targets, 4th at the tight end spot. Finished as the tight end 15. So that makes no sense to me. Maybe he just sucks and he's been playing us this whole time. I don't really know. But aside from that, I think it's pretty straightforward. Kenny G might be the only other one we need to talk about. But Kenny G is where it gets interesting to me because I think he's an extreme value. Right now, Kenny G is going in the back of round 5 per Underdog Fantasy. That is the wide receiver 25. He's being drafted outside of the wide receiver 2 range, and the Giants just paid him a 4-year, $72 million deal. With that contract, I expect the volume to go up for Kenny G and what he was seeing in Detroit. I expect him to get more targets. They might not be as efficient targets. They might not have the depth of target that he was getting from Stafford. But I do expect Kenny G to be the one and to be that number 1 red zone threat in the passing game for the New York Giants. So going as the wide receiver 25, right now, to me, seems like an extreme bargain because if he can stay on the field, there's no reason he's not going to be one of those guys that can give you a simple 5 catches for 80 yards with that touchdown upside and deliver week in and week out. So Kenny G's a guy who I think is definitely being undervalued. He could be a top 12 receiver. He's done it before in Detroit. I'm not concerned about the other weapons. It's like you wouldn't be like DeAndre Hopkins has Rondale Moore, who they drafted in the second round, and Christian Kirk and AJ Green. People aren't worried about DeAndre Hopkins because he's a beast. Like you don't care about these sheep if you're a lion. And in this situation, I think Kenny G is the lion in New York. There's a bunch of other sheep in the offense that are good players in their own right. No disrespect to those guys. But if you're the number one, you should be the number one, and you don't have to worry about these targets going elsewhere.
100%. I love Kenny G this year. Even in Dynasty, I'm picking him up because I just think he's being that slept on because he never really was one of these like true top 5 guys. He never